Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to be looking at some expanded format decks. What decks are winning in expanded right now? Yeah, expanded is a format I'm sure you haven't maybe thought of in a while. Obviously, we don't have any expanded tournaments coming up anytime soon in person, and of course, we haven't really had the full expanded format added to live yet, but I'm still a big fan of the format, and I mean, Japan still plays expanded, and bro, Japan literally just banned Scoop Up Net from their expanded format not too long ago, and I'm sure that might translate over to us very soon too. And a subscriber of mine commented on my San Antonio Day 2 video asking if I had seen the 200-player expanded tournament on Limitless. I didn't see it, and it took me a minute to find it. I actually had to really mess with the filters. It was an in-person tournament. It wasn't even an online tournament, but I did find this 200-player tournament that a subscriber recommended me to take a look at, and I was like, oh, shoot. I didn't even know that was the thing. Like, I didn't know people were still playing expanded this hard. I mean, 200 players is a lot of players, and I've also got PokeBook pulled up here. For some expanded decks. I know there's a lot more expanded results out there in Japan, but I haven't been able to find any of them. I've seen, like, lists on Twitter. Like, I know apparently, like, Articuno, like the Wild Freeze Articuno, is like a deck that won a tournament or something. I just haven't been able to find the deck list anywhere or like the results or anything on PokeBook or any of these websites. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to find all those. If anybody knows where I can find those Japan results and I can look at more expanded decks from Japan, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to do a follow-up video to this. But I mean, we do have a nice big 200-player we have a 200-player online tourney to look at here. There's actually quite a few of them to look at. I mean, to be fair, though, we'll probably look at the ones in November because that's when Paradox Rift was legal, which is obviously where the format is right now. But I'm excited. I haven't really looked at expanded decks in a while. I'm interested to see what decks are winning in expanded, and I'm excited. If y'all are excited too, make sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We are on the road to 10,000 subs here on the second channel. I'll leave a link to PokeBook and the Limitless site here if you want to go check these lists out yourself. So we got the Firehouse Tabletop Masters League, and we can look at some of the results here of what decks ended up doing well in some of these expanded tournaments. So the deck that won the tournament was a Palkia VSTAR deck. Now, that's very interesting. Palkia VSTAR is a very strong card, in my opinion, and I think it expanded. It's got a lot of potential. So, as you can see, there's a lot going on in this deck. For starters, the deck does play Skyfield, which is the main instigator for Palkia. It allows each player to bench up to 8 Pokemon, right? So they can put 8 Pokemon on their bench, meaning that Palkia's Subspace Swell is going to be doing more base damage because you're able to bench more Pokemon on your end. Palkia is a very low-maintenance card. I mean, we already know Star Portal is a very strong V-Star power, but you also have Melanie. Expanded has Versus Seeker, so you have access to a lot of Melanies. You can play literally one Melanie, and it can turn into the 3 Melanies for you. There's also a lot of other water Pokemon in the deck. There's Starmie EV, which can do 50 damage for each energy on all your opponent's Pokemon. Pretty sure that's really good against these decks and expanded that put a lot of energy in play. There's Cryagonal, which has an item lock attack, which is pretty strong too. There's also Tapu Fini GX, which has the attack Tapu Storm. You can shuffle your opponent's active Pokemon and all cards attached to it back into the deck. That's a very strong, like, powerful reset attack. Now, the interesting thing about this Palkia VSTAR list is the inclusion of a 2/2 Toedscruel. Now, I'm not sure what this is for. Wait, no, I do. This shuts off Versus Seeker. Okay, never mind. All right, I immediately just clued in. So the 2/2 Toedscruel shuts off Versus Seeker, which is actually really strong, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's see, like, this is why expanded is awesome, bro. There's like so many like crazy interactions and combos you don't know exist, but they do exist. So yeah, Toedscruel is really good actually because it stops VS Seeker. VS Seeker is obviously one of the strongest cards in the format. It allows you to put a supporter from discard into your hand, so you can literally play, like, you can most of the time just get away with playing like a 1 of Guzma, a 1 of Research, a 1 of Iono, a 1 of whatever, because you have VS Seeker. You have 4 VS Seekers, so that 1 of card is essentially a 5 of in some regards, right? So VS Seeker is really strong. Toedscruel shutting off VS Seeker is actually pretty dirty, to be honest. That is a pretty strong effect, I am not going to lie, for this deck. But yeah, I think Palkia is just a very strong deck. It's a very simple card. It only needs 2 energy to attack, and it combines really nicely with Skyfield. Of course, when you put Skyfield down, Palkia's Subspace Well is going to be doing more damage. I'm not surprised to see it win, because I think Palkia's probably pretty good and expanded, and seeing it win makes sense. In second place here, we did have a Control deck. Now, Control and expanded is pretty strong, and you thought Control was annoying to play against in Standard with Snorlax. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet in the expanded format. Expanded has a lot of Control cards to work with. Some of the main ones this deck plays is the item lock Vileplume, which makes it so each player can't play any items from from their hand, which is actually really strong. Obviously, item lock is a very powerful effect. You do lock yourself from being able to play items, but you're also locking your opponent. Vileplume being a stage 2 is very strong in this type of deck. And then there's also this Dusknoir here, which prevents all special energy on both Pokemon to have a colorless effect instead of any other effect. Very good against Lugia VSTAR, which I'm pretty sure is one of the best decks in Expanded, because Lugia VSTAR just has so many energy to work with in the format. And of course, there's also this Magnezone here, which lets you play 2 supporter cards in a turn, which is really strong. I mean, that's just kind of insane. So you can like play stuff like Guzma and N, or Guzma and Flaregrunt, or Flaregrunt and Team Rocket's Handiwork. Some other control cards this deck has Vileplume. There's 2 Vileplumes with Disgusting Pollen. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent's basic Pokemon can't attack. Some decks right now only play basic Pokemon, and then Vileplume blocks them. There's the Bunnelby here with the Ancient Trade Barrage, where you can attack twice. So you can do Burrow, you can discard the top card of your opponent's deck twice, or you can do Rototiller and get 2 cards from discard pile back into your deck. So that's really, really good. I mean, Bunnelby is a very strong card for these control decks. The deck is still playing at the Toadscruel. I mean, I guess the big card that got added is the TM Evolution, because as you can see, this deck plays 3 Stage 2 EX Pokemon, or EXs, the heck am I saying? It's 3 Stage 2 Pokemon, and when you have the TM Evolution, you can use the TM Evo to put these Stage 2s into play very easily. You can just, like, bench Oddish, bench Duskull, TM Evolution, and then get Gloom and get Dusclops into play very easily. And then the following turn, you can go Dusknoir and Vileplume, or you can go Magnemite, Magneton. You even have Toadscruel in the deck. Once again, I think that's just Toadscruel is going to be insane because of how popular Versus Seeker is. I'm pretty sure it's going to shut off more cards, but the main one, I think, is going to be the VS Seeker. But yeah, this control deck definitely looks pretty annoying. Item lock, special energy blocking, milling with Bunnelby, and all these energy discarding supporter cards makes it a pretty tough deck. I mean, Team Flaregun discards an energy from your active Pokemon. You got Team Rocket's Handiwork, which can flip 2 coins for each head to discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. And there's Plumeria. Discard 2 cards from your hand. If you do, discard an energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. So there's all these energy discarding supporter cards in this deck. You can get them back with Bunnelby. You have Lusamine, which is a very strong supporter, which lets you loop the supporter cards and get multiple back in a turn. So pretty strong stuff here. This is definitely a pretty strong control deck. Item lock, special energy block is strong. And of course, we got a Lugia in top 4. Like I said, Lugia is disgusting in Expanded because, dude, you have Rainbow Energy, Aurora Energy, and Double Dragon Energy. Those are the 4, or 3, I should say, best energies in the format, in my opinion. And you just have access to all of them for free, which is pretty insane. Now, this Lugia deck here that got top 4 does have a lot of cool things. I mean, we are seeing the Tina Chomp. We've already kind of seen this before. I did a video on a Lugia Tina Chomp deck a while ago. Basically, you can like GGN, you can Calamitous Slash, because you can put like a bunch of double dragons on it in a single turn. With Archeops, you can donk your opponent with Wally, Lugia, Tina Chomp. There's Amazing Rare Raikou, which is pretty good, doing 120 to 2 Pokemon. I mean, most decks in Expanded don't really respect the bench snipe, in my opinion, and that's where the Raikou gets really, really good, because you do have access to Raikou to snipe stuff. And then there's also stuff like Garchomp V, which can discard 3 energy from this Pokemon and do 220 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And then there's Hoopa V. Now, Hoopa V is a Dark and a Psychic Pokemon. I'm not sure what the dual type is for. Like, I don't know what matchup you're trying to hit for weakness in, but this is definitely in here for a specific reason. To hit something for weakness, I'm not too sure what's weak to Psychic and Dark. I guess Dark could be like Gengar, Mimikyu, and Shadow Rider. And then there's the Stakataka here, which if your opponent has 3 free prize remaining, gets 200 HP, and then it does top down, which flip a coin until you get tails. For each head, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. I'm not sure what matchup this is for. Maybe it's for like a control matchup, I guess, because you're able to like just mill them. It's got to be better mill cards though, right? But I don't know. That's definitely interesting. And then, of course, the deck does come together through Special Charge. Special Charge does let you put special energy back in your deck. So while you do play 4 Rainbows and 4 Auroras, you have 8 of those Aurora energy effects in the deck for Archeops. You also have 3 copies of Special Charge to put the special energy back in the deck. So after something gets knocked out, you can just put the energy back in your deck with Special Charge and then re-put them back into place. So you're not limited to how many Rainbows and Auroras you have access to, which is kind of dirty. That's one of the things that makes Lugia Archeops so strong. I would argue this is probably the best deck in Expanded just because of how strong, you know, this deck is, because of how many good attackers you can abuse with Archeops. Regidrago is another deck in Expanded that's been getting pretty good results. We do see a pretty cool Regidrago deck here in top 4. Regidrago VSTAR in Expanded does have some pretty good stuff going on. As you can see, Dragon Pokemon do exist in Expanded. There's a lot more dragons in Expanded than standard. I mean, we do have our usual suspects, like we got the Noivern, we got the Duraludon, we got the Gudra in the deck, you know, the normal attackers. You even got like Dragonite in here that puts energy into play, but there's other Dragon Pokemon. One of the stronger ones is also the Noivern GX, where you're either item locking the opponent or you're special energy locking them too. So very strong attacker for the Regidrago deck. There's also Dialga GX. Now, Dialga GX is disgusting. It has the attack Timeless GX, which does 150 damage, and then you get to take another turn. So it's essentially, you know, Star Chronos, right? And this is a very strong GX attack. I mean, Regidrago being able to take an extra turn on you is pretty disgusting. This is why this Dialga is so strong. Dragon Pokemon, in my opinion, like, rule expanded because there's so many good Dragon Pokemon, especially now that, like, stuff like Dialga GX, which is a pretty bad card otherwise, is now playable because of a card like Regidrago VSTAR. It's just kind of crazy. And that's one of the things I like about Expanded, dude. It's just these, like, random bulk cards become playable because of cards like Regidrago VSTAR enabling Timeless GX. And then, of course, there's also this Mega Rayquaza here that could do 300 damage. So it's just a really good way to just delete something in the active spot, especially all the big tag teams, and I guess some of the EXs and VMAXs too can be KO'd a bit easy. And yeah, that's basically the deck. Those are all your Dragon Pokemon. And there's also the support Pokemon in the deck, like Sudowoodo, which blocks your opponent from being able to play more than 4 Pokemon on their bench. The one thing with the Drago deck is its energy acceleration doesn't really exist. The deck has to go attach, attack, as you can see, because it doesn't play Gardenia, it doesn't play Welder. It does have Raihan in the deck, I guess, which does let you, accelerate energy to Drago, but there isn't any, like, crazy energy acceleration. It's more of it's not a slow deck, but it's a deck where you have to go attach, attack. It is a very strong deck nonetheless, and I think Regidrago VSTAR is a very cool deck and Expanded. One of my favorite Expanded decks. I like Drago. Arceus VSTAR is also good and Expanded because it has a lot to abuse. The main thing VSTAR can abuse is cards like double Colorless Energy and triple Acceleration Energy. So triple Acceleration Energy counts as 3 Colorless Energy when it's on a Pokemon. So you put this on your Arceus VSTAR, and it can use Trinity for a single energy attachment, which is pretty dirty. This build here is a little bit more of a disruption version of Arceus VSTAR, though. It is playing the Seismitoad EX, which does have the attack Quaking Punch, which for a double Colorless Energy can item lock the opponent. Toad is an infamous card. There's also Galarian Moltres is like a big dark attacker that you can also charge up with Arceus. The deck still plays the Toad's Cruel. It's got the Girafarig, which I haven't looked at yet, but it's a pretty powerful card. You put 2 cards from your opponent's discard back into the Lost Zone. Very strong card. Being able to force cards in Lost Zone is ridiculous. This card is extremely powerful in my opinion. So you can check away supporters, energy, Pokemon, any important resources that your opponent is trying to abuse, you can throw away with Girafarig. That's what makes Girafarig so strong. This deck does play energy removal. It's got the Plumeria. It's got the Faba. We do have Crushing Hammer and Enhanced Hammer, which discards special energy from your opponent's Pokemon. So yeah, it's basically just like an energy removal disruption Arceus deck. Instead of kind of leaning towards more like of a big attacking type deck, it's just playing all these disruption cards. So definitely an interesting arc list there, because there's a lot of ways you can play Arceus in Expanded. We got another Palkia deck here, which it looks like it's pretty much like the same 60, albeit they do play a Captivating Pokepuff, which forces your opponent to reveal their hand. You can put any number of basic Pokemon you find there onto their bench. So if your opponent is just holding Pokemon, you can play down Skyfield, make your opponent's bench bigger, and then you can play the Captivating Pokepuff, and then you can force Pokemon onto their bench so that Palkia VSTAR can do more damage, which is a very strong one of inclusion within the Palkia deck. So 2 Palkias in top 8. Palkia looks like it's a pretty good deck. There's a Snorlax control deck here in Expanded. There's another Snorlax with block. There ain't one, there's 2, baby. There's another one here. The Snorlax also happens to have the block ability, which is awesome. Everyone loves Snorlax. I know Snorlax is everyone's favorite card, but this one also, of course, does have block, which does block your opponent from retreating. And this build is kind of like the Snorlax one we have in, our format. It's got a lot of disruption cards. It's got the Wobbuffet, which, as long as it's in the active spot, each Pokemon in play, each player's hand, and discard have no abilities except for Psychic Pokemon. So your opponent can use, like, Tapu Lele and stuff under the Wobbuffet, but they can't go to Dene, they can't go Crobat, they can't go Arceus VSTAR. None of those abilities work. They have to just rely on those Psychic Pokemon. Persian's really strong, too. Alolan Persian GX has the ability Smug Face. You prevent all effective attacks of this Pokemon done by your opponent's tag team Pokemon, Ultra Beast, and Pokemon with special energy on them. This is very strong against Lugia VSTAR, right? Because their deck is like all special energy. And then there's, the Electrike. Mainly just here for barrier. Your opponent cannot boss it. Effectively, that's why Electrike's in here. Same with Regirock. Your opponent cannot boss the Regirock or Electrike. Those are some of the main reasons why you do see them. But yeah, this is just an old-fashioned, like, block lax deck with a few extra annoying cards like the Persian and the Wobbuffet. But it does have a lot of cards like the Counter Catcher we see there. Surprisingly enough, I don't see any Erica's Invitation. I do feel like that's maybe a card you could still play in a deck like this, because it's just that strong of a supporter. It does play the Captivating Pokepuff we just looked at, that, forces a Pokemon into play, but I don't know. I feel like Erica could be good in here too, but it does have a lot of control cards. It's got the Lucamines. It's got, Teammates, which is very good in this deck. Whenever something gets knocked out, you can search your deck for 2 cards, put them in your hand. Very, very strong supporter card. This is just an example of just how strong control is in Expanded. I mean, there's 2 control in top 8. There's the Vileplume one, and then there's the Snorlax block one. This is just further proof that, control is just a very, very powerful archetype within Expanded, because the card pool is so big, you just have a big card pool and so many control cards to make a good control deck work. Got another Lugia deck here in top 8. This one does have a little bit of different attackers, not leaning into the dragons as much. It does have a dragon Pokemon, but it is playing more of like a Paradox build. We got the Roaring Moon and the Iron Hands EX. Imagine if this was Lugia nowadays, when Aurora still existed. That'd be kind of crazy. But yeah, it does play Roaring Moon and Iron Hands. We all know what those do. We got Naganadel and Guzzlord. With the ability Violent Appetite, you can discard a Pokemon from your hand, then heal 60 from this Pokemon, or you can do Chaotic Order, which you can turn all your prizes face up. This Pokemon has basically 3 energy, like energy on it for the effect. You can take 2 prize cards. So you just immediately take 2 prizes with that Jet Stack, which is very, very powerful. And then, of course, you do have Jet Pierce. Just a very tanky and beastly Pokemon. And then, of course, you can win the game in 1 turn with Chaotic Order if you have 4 prizes or 2 prizes left. You can take a lot of your prizes with Iron Hands EX, which you can easily build up with Lugia. I mean, you can build it up right now in Standard. I mean, Iron Hands, he's playing Lugia right now with Earthen Vessel. But when you have Auroras and Rainbow Energy in Expanded, you can build up Iron Hands EX even easier, which is kind of disgusting. So Hands and Lugia and Expanded seems pretty good. You got Roaring Moon in the deck, which you can build up with the Rainbows and the Auroras also to power it up. It's got Magearna EX, which is interesting. You prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks except damage done to each Pokemon with Metal Energy on them. The idea of this is it's kind of just here for these mirror scenarios. If you're playing against another Roaring Moon deck, they can insta-KO you, but if you have Magearna down and you have a Rainbow Energy or Aurora on a Pokemon that they try to Roaring Moon with Magearna in play, you prevent that Pokemon from getting KO'd. So it's kind of like Espeon VMAX, or yeah, it's like Espeon VMAX in a way. But yeah, really cool Lugia deck. A bit more of a different take on Lugia in Expanded, but this is one thing I like about Expanded. There's just so many different ways you can play a deck like Lugia. We saw 2 different versions of it in the top 8 alone. We got a Dragonite deck here in 9th. So another very strong deck in Expanded is Turbo Dragons, I guess it's called, or Dragonite V. So Dragonite V is a very powerful Expanded deck that we've seen before do pretty well. So Dragonite, it's a very strong card. We see it played a lot in the Lost Zone decks, but in Expanded, you can attack with this card on your first turn of the game. And how you do that is you play Tapu Koko Prism Star, which, once you're in turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you can choose 2 of your bench Pokemon and attach a Light Energy from your discard pile to each of those Pokemon, and then you can send this card to the Lost Zone. So if you have 2 Light in your discard pile, Koko on your bench, you can put a Light Energy onto the Dragonite V, and then you can put a double Dragon Energy onto your Dragonite, and then in 1 turn, you can do Dragon Gale for 250 damage, which is pretty disgusting if you ask me. And that's why this Turbo Dragonite Koko deck was such a very powerful Expanded deck. I mean, back in the day, when PCGO existed, RIP, Dragonite V was one of the top decks, and this is why. Being able to attack turn 1 is really good, but of course you could also use the ADP in the deck. You got the Naganadel Guzzlord ADP, very infamous card. It's got that Jextech Altercation where, right, if you have a water and a Metal Energy on it, for the rest of the game, when you knock something out, you can take an extra prize, and your attacks will do 30 more damage, which is disgusting. This works with a single double Dragon Energy, and then you also have Ultimate Ray, which you can build up in a single turn. So just a lot of very strong Dragon Pokemon within this deck. Again, this is one of the reasons why Expanded is so hated, is because decks like this exist where you can just immediately 250 damage on the first turn of the game. Pretty disgusting, pretty crazy stuff. And this is why Dragonite is one of the top decks. It didn't get top 8, but it's still a good deck because it almost got top 8. There's a Miraidon deck here in the top 16. Miraidon definitely is another deck in Expanded that I think has a lot of potential, mainly because there is a lot of Lightning Pokemon to choose from. Not only is there a lot of Lightning Pokemon to choose from, there's even more Lightning Energy Acceleration cards in Expanded. Of course, we already know Electric Generator, but there's other cards too. There's Thunder Mountain, which the attacks of Lightning Pokemon, both yours and your opponent, cost 1 Lightning less, which is insane. That all of a sudden Miraidon needs 2 lightning to attack, which it makes it a Raikou V, basically. And then there's also Koko Prism, we just looked at. That's another way to get energy into play for Miraidon. Miraidon has damage modifiers with Electro Power, letting your... it's Power Tablet for Lightning Pokemon, letting them do 30 more damage. Just some pretty crazy combos here in Expanded. There's Vigavolt that, you can play, which can item lock your opponent. You can build it up in a single turn with Generator. There's Iron Hands you can still play. Imagine being able to build this up in like one turn with, Generator, Coco, and Thunder Mountain and stuff. So you got some pretty crazy ways you can pull off turn 1 attacks with an Expanded for Lightning decks. I think Lightning in Expanded is very, very powerful. There's a lot of Pokemon to choose from. I mean, we see the hands, the Vigavolt, the Miraidon. There's no Raichu, no Raikou in the deck. It's just leaning more towards the Miraidon, which is a lot easier to attack with an Expanded when you have all these Energy Acceleration cards. And there's Coco GX too we can look at. It does have the ability where when you play from your hand, you can move any number of lightning energy from your other Pokemon to this Pokemon, and then you do switch it into the active spot. And then you got Tapu Thunder, which is 50 damage for each energy on all your opponent's Pokemon. Another one of those things like we saw the Starmie and the Palkia deck, kind of the same thing, just has that big blow-up attack. So yeah, Miraidon and Expanded seems kind of insane, in my opinion. We got another deck here to look at. We got another interesting deck. This is, it's the Alolan Raichu OTK deck. I did a video on this deck, actually. Now, the expanded format on live is smaller, so I didn't get to play this, this exact list, but I did play an Alolan Raichu deck, which I did do a video on the channel a while back. But yeah, Raichu and Expanded is gross. So discard any amount of light energy from this Pokemon. For each one discarded in this way, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and do 30 damage to it. So basically, what you do is you give up a bunch of prizes with Electro GX with Extra Energy Bomb, where you can knock it out, attach 5 energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon that are not GXs or EXs, so you just use Electrode to put energy onto your Raichus. You blow up 2 of them, you put 4 energy into play, you activate Reversal Energy and Counter Energy, which can provide 3 lightning or 2 lightning with their effects, and then you just Electro Rain, and you're doing like 300 damage in a single turn. And then you have Gengar Mimikyu, which you can use as your GX attack. So you can Gengar Mimikyu your opponent, force them to have like maybe 1 or 2 Pokemon in play, and then the following turn you can go for the Raichu play and then just win the game on the spot. So it's kind of like a Raichu OTK combo deck. Very powerful deck. I've done a video on this deck already. If you want to see this type of deck in action, definitely go check out the expanded video on the main channel. Another Palkia here in top 16. This one does have some more stuff going on. We do see some extra cards that we didn't see before. There's Shenpao in the deck. There's a Manaphy EX, which does give your Pokemon with water energy on them a free retreat cost, so that's nice to have. There's this Whismur in here with Ball. You can only use this attack if you go second, and only on your first turn. Your opponent can't play any trainers from their hand, so you just try to slow the opponent down with the Whismur, which is kind of an interesting tech card. Aqua Patch is a really cool card, too, for water Pokemon. It's Dark Patch, but for water Pokemon. Attach water energy from discard to one of your bench water Pokemon. Pretty good way to either build up, Palkia or even Shenpao, which is kind of cool. Obviously, there's still Skyfield and stuff within the deck, so just still your normal Palkia stuff. Another Drago deck here in top 16. This one does have some other attackers in it. It does have this Palkia GX with 0 Vanish. You thought Dialga was good. Well, okay, Dialga's still better, but Palkia does have 0 Vanish. You can shuffle all energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon into their deck. So in the late game, you can like enter Iono your opponent to a small hand, and then you can hit them with a 0 Vanish and force all the energy back in their deck and reset your opponent's board, which is pretty disgusting. Giratina EX is really good too with Chaos Wheel. Your opponent cannot play any tools, special energy, or stadiums from their hand, much like, the Noivern GX. It blocks special energy, but also blocking stadiums can be pretty deadly too. Yeah, blocking stadiums is really good. So it's cool to see Drago have these results. I think it's a really strong expanded deck. All right, we got another deck here to look at. It is another control deck, and this is the Articuno deck. So I don't know if this is the exact list I saw on Twitter, but I did see that Articuno was doing well in Japan. And maybe it's the list I looked at. So yeah, it's an Articuno deck. So we've seen this card before in Standard. It's got Wild Freeze. This Pokemon does 50 damage to itself, but your opponent's active is now paralyzed. So in Expanded, right, you can play this with all kinds of cards, like Protection Cube, which prevents all damage done to the Pokemon this card is attached to by attacks it uses. So you can immediately paralyze your opponent for free with Protection Cube. And there's no drawback. You don't take 50 damage, so you don't get knocked out. Obviously, you might fall behind in prizes. You can play Counter Catcher. You can play Counter Energy to build up Articuno in a single turn. This deck is really, really cool. And this is a deck that I think has potential in Expanded. I mean, there are decks that do respect the Articuno. Obviously, we are seeing the Toadscruel being good because it blocks the Seeker, because Guzma is a problem for this deck. There's other, cards, too. Obviously, there's Acerola, there's AZ, there's Turo Scenario. So there are all these, anti-Articuno cards. But if you're just always paralyzing the opponent, you're just going to win the game at some point. And that's what makes this Articuno so powerful. So this is a really cool deck. Now, unfortunately, I can't play the full deck in Expanded because Protection Cube is actually from Flashfire, which is in X and Y, not in Sun and Moon. But I would love to do a video on this deck if, Protection Cube existed. I'd have to play Emergency Jelly, which is not very good compared to Protection Cube, but that's a really cool deck for sure. We got 2 more Arc decks in top 16. We do have an Arc Crobat deck here in top 16. Now, that's interesting. So, I guess the idea is you just have a really strong, big Dark-type attacker with the Crobat. You have the hit and run effect, which I don't think is like the main draw of it. I think it's mainly just there because you play Crobat V, and then you can also play the VMAX for the big Dark attacker. And then still like the other build we looked at with the energy removal cards and the Seismitoad. And then we got another Arceus deck here, which this one is a bit different. This is an Arceus Garbodor deck. So Garbodor is a card I've been asking actually to get reprinted for a while, but Garbodor's got the ability Garbotoxin. If this Pokemon has a tool on it, each Pokemon in play have no abilities. So you block all the abilities, you're shutting off everything. Dedenne, Lele, Toadskruel, Arceus VSTAR, all of these abilities, Electro GX, all those abilities are just shut off by Garbodor, and then you're just beating them down with Arceus VSTAR. That's basically the idea of this deck. There is the Regidrago in the deck, which is interesting to put a trainer card back. So it's kind of like a pseudo-wish control style deck. It does have energy removal, like Plumeria, enhanced hammers in the deck. But it is kind of just like an Arc Garbodor deck in its whole. It's just more of an attacking Arceus VSTAR deck. Another Snorlax deck here outside of top 16. Pretty similar to the 60 we already looked at. But yeah, Snorlax is a pretty dirty deck. Another Lugia here. This one is another Dragon Lugia. It does have the Iron Hands in the deck, though, which I think is a pretty natural inclusion to play in the Lugia deck, in my opinion, because Iron Hands EX just seems like a very strong card to play in Lugia in Expanded because you can just put a Roar energy on it and then easily power it up with, like, double colorless energy and stuff. So it makes sense to play Iron Hands with Lugia still. Another deck here to look at. It's another Articuno lock deck. So there's 2 of them here in this tournament that did pretty well. So yeah, it's cool to see this Articuno deck. I really want to do a video on it, but I can't because Protection Cube does not exist, which is annoying. There's a Roaring Moon deck. So Roaring Moon in Expanded seems decent. It actually has a lot of tools to work with. For starters, you can play Dark Patch and Max Elixir. Now, Max Elixir is a very strong card, very similar to Generator. You can look at the top 6 cards of your deck, attach a basic energy you find there to a basic Pokemon onto your bench. So Max Elixir can easily accelerate an energy to your Roaring Moon. So you have multiple ways to build up your Roaring Moon. You can play it, obviously, with Sada, you can play Dark Patch, and you can also play Max Elixir, and you just try to build up a Roaring Moon in a single turn, and then it makes it even easier to do Frenzied Gouging. You do have other Darkrai's in the deck. I mean, you can see 3 different Darkrai's in here. It's Darkrai GX, where you can put it from your discard pile on your bench for free, and then put a Dark Energy on it. It's got the attack Dead End GX, which, if your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by a special condition, it is immediately knocked out. This deck does play 2 Hypnotoxic Lasers, which you can use with Dead End. There's Darkrai EX, which gives your Dark Pokemon with Dark Energy, or any Pokemon, sorry, with Dark Energy on them, a free retreat cost, which is also very strong. So Turbo Roaring Moon Expanded definitely seems decent because it has way more options. There's a Shadow Rider deck here that did pretty good in the tournament. Shadow Rider VMAX and Expanded has a lot of tools too because you have energy acceleration and there's a lot of strong Pokemon you combine it with. One of the main cards Shadow Rider sees plays with is, of course, the Gengar Mimikyu Tag Team GX with Poltergeist and Horror House. Very, very strong card. And then, of course, Bane EX in the deck, another item lock card, and it's got Poltergeist. But yeah, this is a pretty strong addition to Shadow Rider because you do get X item lock. And item lock in Expanded is very good because there are so many good items to play in Expanded. There's also this Shuppet here, which can discard a special energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon, which low-key is kind of decent, especially in combination with Shadow Rider V's Shadow Mist attack, which is also one of the things that makes Shadow Rider so good. A lot of decks in Expanded do heavily rely on special energy, and then Shadow Rider can immediately just Shadow Mist them and deny them access to that, which is really, really good. So yeah, Shadow Rider, definitely a deck you got to look out for in Expanded. Another Palkia here. Yeah, looks like it's similar to the 60 we looked at. It's got an Iron Bundle in the deck, though, so I guess something a little different. See what else we got here. There's another Regidrago deck here to look at. This one does have the Goodra, the Dialga. Yeah, pretty similar to the one we looked at, too. It does play Garbodor in the deck, actually, which, that's pretty good. We got a Vigavolt Regieleki deck in Expanded. So, yeah, Vigavolt being able to item lock on turn 1 is really good with the generators. Actually, well, this deck doesn't play Generator, though. This deck isn't playing Generator. Wait, what? Yeah, it's not playing Generator. It's actually playing Max Elixirs instead of Generator. But yeah, it's just basically an aggressive item locking deck. You can boost the damage Regieleki VMAX. You have Verbank City, Hypnotoxic Laser to also help with the damage output. Guardian Expanded is also an interesting deck because Guardy does still have a lot of good tools. There's more, there's other Gardevoirs you can play. The big one you can see here is the Psychic Mirage Gardevoir, where each basic Psychic Energy attached to your Psychic Pokemon provide 2 Psychic Energy at a time, which means you have to put less Psychic Energy onto a Pokemon with Gardevoir EX, which is actually pretty strong. And there's other Psychic Pokemon you can play in the format, but this deck doesn't play any. It's keeping it to like the Zacian, the Mew. I guess there's Tapu Lele, which is different. There's also Articuno, but there's no other like psychic Pokemon. It's more of an attacking Zacian V deck, if anything. But Gardevoir has a lot of possibilities in Expanded. Serena EX, another really cool archetype in Expanded. So the idea behind Serena V, sorry, not EX, V. Serena V, with Queen's Order, you can discard any number of your bench Pokemon. This attack does 40 more damage for each bench Pokemon you discarded in this way. So you, once again, play this with Skyfield to fill your bench up. You can discard cards like Giratina with Distortion Door. Once your turn, if this Pokemon is in your discard pile, you can put it onto your bench for free, and then if you do, you can put 1 damage counter onto your opponent's bench Pokemon, much like the Halucha from Scarlet and Violet. And then it also has Execute with Propagation, where once you're in turn, before you attack, if this Pokemon's in your discard pile, you can put it into your hand. So you can put the Execute into your hand and then put it on your bench for free with Serena, and then discard all of those and do a buttload of damage. You build a Serena very quickly with the Tapu Koko here as a way to charge it up. There's Raihan when it gets knocked out. So yeah, Serena V is just a very powerful basic attacker that just has access to these very strong Pokemon that can be forced onto your bench for Serena's attack. I guess we can maybe look at these Snorlax decks. Yeah, they're just kind of the same Blocklax 60s. Or similar 60s. Another Dragonite deck here. Again, the Turbo Dragon deck is a very strong deck and Expanded. I'm surprised it didn't get top 8. It almost got top 8, though. So, to be fair, it almost got top 8. A couple Roy and Moon decks here. This one here, similar to the one we looked at, playing at the triple Darkrai. The Darkrai VSTAR, GX, and EX. A whole generation of Darkrai's in one deck. Crazy stuff. Yeah, another Roy and Moon with the Darkrai's. Move on here. Another Shadow Rider deck here to look at. This one doesn't have the Bayonet. It does play Alolan Muck, though, which it does prevent each base Pokemon in play to have no abilities. So it's a great way to shut off cards like Sudowoodo, Execute, the Giratina, Lele, Dedenne, all that stuff gets shut off. There's more Pokemon, too, but those are the big ones. And then you still have the Gengar. I guess Esper we can look at here real quick. Moving energy from your opponent's bench Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon, so it's kind of a way to, like, move energy off stuff like special energy, ideally, right? That's kind of the idea. Or just energy in general. It depends on what you're playing against, I guess. There's a Tina Chomp deck here. It looks like it's a traditional Tina Chomp turbo deck. So the idea of, obviously, with Tina Chomp is much like the Dragonite, you can charge up Giratina Garchomp in a single turn, building up Calamitous Slash, which can do essentially 250 damage, too, when you combine it with Galarian Zigzagoon. You do the same thing. You, like, Coco the energy to it, attach Double Dragon to it, and then attack with Calamity Slash on your first turn. Or you can GGN on the first turn of the game, too. Mew VMAX and Expanded is another really interesting deck because it has access to Skyfield. But this build does not play Skyfield, though. Never mind. But yeah, I was going to say, Mew can play Skyfield, which means you can bench even more Genesects and Mews. And you can draw up to 8 cards every time you do your Genesects ability, which is pretty insane and ridiculous if you think about it. So that's definitely something to kind of keep your eye out on, is Mew and Expanded. We got another interesting Lugia V-Star deck here. It's a Dragon build. It does play the weirdier V in the deck, however, and does have the Garchomp V. So that's a cool take on Lugia, too. It's a Jolteon deck here I wanted to look at, too. So Jolteon Expanded is also really strong because it does have access to Silent Lab, which can shut off the abilities of, like, the Mew and stuff, so you can just immediately snipe them. You can play Iron Valiant in the deck. I know there's also the Galarian Zigzagoon you can play, but this build is playing in the Iron Valiant. It does play Inteleon, too. It's kind of still going back to the old shady dealings engine, which is cute. There's an Urshifu deck I wanted to look at here, too, actually. So Urshifu, kind of similar to the Coco and stuff. You can build it up very quickly. It needs 2 energy. Actually, this build doesn't play Coco, I just realized. But it does play strong energy in Diancie, which Diancie can increase the damage of your fighting Pokemon's attacks by 20 when it's on the bench. Strong energy, like powerful energy, makes your fighting Pokemon also do 20 more damage. So then all of a sudden, Gale Thrust is doing more damage. That's interesting, yeah. You have this Octillery, not the other Octillery. It's this Octillery with Abyssal Hand where you can draw up till 5. So that's cool to see. But that's interesting for sure to see the Urshifu deck. A lot of these did go like 6 and 4 and stuff, but we can look at some of these other decks here that we haven't really looked at yet. We can look at this Arceus deck, see if it's any different. Yeah, it's an Arc. Oh, wait, no, it's an ADP deck. Wait. I was an Arceus, though. Huh, it's an Arceus, but I guess like the thing said it was ADP because Arceus is part of ADP. That's interesting. It's an ADP Lightning Box deck. Yo, ADP with Iron Hands? Yo, that sounds kind of nasty, bro. Yo, future video idea right there. ADP Hands. Actually, I'm so down. I'm so down to do a video on ADP Hands. I like that because ADP makes you take the extra prize when you KO something, and then Iron Hands also takes an extra prize. So you're taking 2 extra prizes for knocking something out. That is pretty crazy, actually. Jeez, that's dirty. Turbo Meloetta is also really cool and expanded because you can easily build it up in a single turn with the Elisa Sparkle Fusion Energy. You can donk the opponent. You can use Dimension Valley to attack for 1 less energy. And you can also play Special Charge. So you don't just have 4 Fusion Energy in your entire deck like you usually would in the Mew deck. You have Special Charge, which can put the Fusion Energy back in the deck. And you can just constantly loop Elisa Sparkle every turn and keep just attacking with Meloetta. So you basically just have this like one prize attacker the entire game. You have Power Tablet to do more damage. Sometimes just doing 210 damage is fine, because then you're doing more with Power Tab. That's a really cool deck. The Turbo Meloetta deck's a really cool deck. I want to look at the Dialga deck here real quick. Oh, yeah, it's the Dialga Electro Tina deck. I did a video on this deck. It's actually one of my most viewed videos on the channel. If you want to go watch it on the main channel, you can. But I did a video on this deck. It basically can win the game in a single turn with Electro, Cyrus, Prism Star, and then also GG End and Star Chronos and stuff. I want to see what Charizard looks like in Expanded. Yeah, so I've seen Charizard with Inteleon. I've seen some of these like lists using Charizard GX. The Charizard GX, or Charizard EX, sorry, has to be really good in Expanded, right? I mean, it has so many cards you can play. It has a bigger card pool to choose from, and there's more Charizards to choose from in Expanded. There's no way Charizard EX can't be good in Expanded as it is good in Standard, but it's also going to be good in Expanded, right? This build uses Shady Dealings to easily get the Charizards in play, and that does make sense. I mean, Shady Dealings, I think, is a pretty good combo to play with Charizard. I think I've seen some of these decks on PokeBook. But there was that expanded tourney. I guess we can look at the last one here. It's only had 37 players in it, but quickly take a look at it. 2 Palkias. Yeah, look at that. 2 Palkias. That's probably why the Palkia deck won both tournaments. So Palkia winning both tournaments. We got a Roaring Moon here in top 4, playing the 3 Darkrai's. There was a... we see another Vileplume Dusknoir control stall deck here. It's a unique take on control. That's what I like about Expanded. The control decks are annoying, but they're like unique. You know what I mean? They're unique. Got another Turbo Meloetta deck here in top 4. A couple of Regidrago decks back to back. Just a straight Regidrago build, and then are we going to see the Garbodor Regidrago deck? Nope. 2 just kind of straightforward Dragos here in top 8. Another Roaring Moon here in top 8. Again, with the Darkrai and stuff. What else? We got the Vikavolt Regieleki deck, too. Once again, not playing Generator, playing the Max Elixirs instead. Which, I mean, it is good, too. I mean, both Elixir and Generator are probably fine to play in the deck. There's Volcarona. I guess we can look at that real quick. Volcarona was another really cool expanded deck where you basically dump your hand with Zebstrika, and then you can do Surging Flames and then put all the energy back in the deck. There's also Volcanion EX you can play to do more damage and discard energy, so you're like doing plus 50 damage for Volcarona. This was another really strong expanded deck from back in the day. And I guess we can quickly go here and look at the decks here on PokeBook real quick. This video's already been going on longer than I expected it to be, but we can look here at some of the deck recipes that PokeBook posted. We see another like Lugia Dragon deck here. Again, Lugia Dragon seems to be a very good concept because you can abuse these very broken Dragon cards with Double Dragon. There's Shadow Rider, VMAX, which can also play cards like the Trevenant and Dusknoir, which makes, it's a very good hand destruction card. You choose 2 random cards from your opponent's hand, and then, of course, your opponent puts, shuffles those back in the deck. Combine that with Marnie, even Iono in the late game. It's a pretty dirty combo. And yeah, see, Charizard EX. Charizard EX being able to just use Inteleon. It does play that Charizard from Team Up, where it can self-accelerate Fire Energy to it, so it can be like a big late game attacker. It's a good one prize card too. But yeah, looks like Charizard EX and Expanded likes to see play with the Inteleon engine as a great way to easily get Rare Candy Charizard going, which it makes sense, right? Another Drago build playing the Garbodor. Again, Drago, very strong deck. We see a Mew deck here. Now, this Mew deck does still play the Meloetta, still plays the Sparkle and stuff. It's not playing Skyfield. It's playing Dimension Valley, which lets Mew attack for 1 energy. You can put a Weakness Guard energy on it, which is what that is. Weakness Guard energy, when it's on a Pokemon, that Pokemon has no weakness. So then all of a sudden, Mew can attack for 1 energy with Dimension Valley and Weakness Guard energy, and then Mew has no weakness, which is pretty crazy. Like not even Drapion or like those big Crobat VMAXs we saw will stop it. Here's a Skyfield build of Mew. So again, Skyfield Mew, I think it's pretty good because you can also then play non-fusion Pokemon. Because, I mean, drawing up to 8 is really good, but you don't have to draw up to 8. But this build here also tries to draw up to, quite a few cards with the Skyfield. But it does have other cards like the Jirachi Prism. When you take a prize and your bench is open and you take it off the prizes, you can put the card on your bench and then take an extra prize. We got another Miraidon Vikavolt deck here. This one not playing Regieleki. It is playing the Generator and the Max Elixir to try to really turbo the energy. I think Iron Hands could probably also maybe be added in there. We got another Serena deck here. Again, trying to fill your bench up with Tinas and Executes to then discard with Serena's attack. Vikavolt Regieleki here, though. This one does... Okay, so this build here actually does play the Max Elixir, but no Electric Generator. We got Pikarom. I did a video on Pikarom, too, actually, when when Generator came out with Miraidon. So if you want to see that too. Here's another Turbo Meloetta deck with the Sparkle. Just trying to attack with Meloetta the entire time alongside getting a special charge to get the Fusion Energy back. We got the Turbo Dragonite deck. And there's a Tinglu deck, and that's cool. So Tinglu expanded has potential with Tinglu's ability to shut off abilities of the Pokemon with damage on them. I mean, you have Roxy Weezing, which is the engine this deck plays. So Roxy allows you to discard up to 2 Pokemon from your hand, and then you can either draw 3 for 1, or you can draw 6 for 2 Pokemon that you discard with Roxy. If you use Weezing with Roxy, you can put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So you use Weezing to damage everything for Tinglu. That's a really cool combo. So yeah, Tinglu, Roxy, Weezing actually seems like a really cool way to play Tinglu instead of relying on like Hawlucha and stuff, right? And your own attack. I really like that idea. That's pretty sick. I actually kind of want to try Tinglu and expand it. That's something I've been looking at. We got Turbo Darkrai VSTAR here. No Roaring Moon, just straight up just Turbo Darkrai. Now, this one's really cool. Alakazam EX with Wobbuffet. So Wobbuffet, when it's in the active spot, blocks all the non-psychic Pokemon abilities, so it really slows your opponent down. And while it's in the active, you can sit behind the Wobbuffet and attack with Alakazam EX, which is really cool. I think Alakazam and Expanded is really sick. It still needs 2 energy to attack, which, can make it a bit slower, but I really like the idea of combining it with Wobbuffet, because it's a great Pokemon just to open up with. It really slows your opponent down. They can't do Dedenne, Lugia, Arceus, Palkia. They can't do Crobat or anything. They can Lele, but that's about it. So that's really cool. That's a really cool deck. And then we see a Wobbuffet stall deck. So once again, really trying to abuse Wobbuffet's ability where once in the active spot, your opponent's Pokemon have no abilities. But yeah, those are some expanded decks I wanted to look at on PokeBook. I know there is some results somewhere because I did that Articuno deck we looked at. I saw somewhere else. But that's really cool, man. There are some really creative decks in Expanded. And that's what I like about the format. I know there are toxic combos and decks, but I think that the creativity and the card pool being so big really makes for some really fun stuff. And I'm definitely really itching to do an Expanded video soon now, because after looking at the results, it's going to be hyped to try out the format. Even though we're stuck with the Sun and Moon format, not the black and white on format that normally we should be having. So the card pool is a bit shorter, but I guess we can play like the wish version of some of these decks that we looked at. But that'll be for me on today's video. I'll leave a link down below to Limitless and PokeBook if you want to go check out some of these expanded decks yourself. If you're interested in expanded, maybe you have an expanded tournament IRL come up soon or something, or you just really like the format and want to build it and play it. Here you go. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below what you think of expanded. What deck did you what deck did you think was most interesting? Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day, and bye-bye.